The bass thumped through the soles of my worn-out heels, vibrating up my legs as I clutched my cheap cocktail like a lifeline. Dim blue lights cast shadows across faces, making strangers into ghosts and memories into nightmares. The ice in my glass clinked softly, a pathetic substitute for the confidence I'd lost 3 months ago. 3 months since the divorce. 3 months since I'd discovered my husband wasn't just unfaithful, he was compromised. A mid-level intelligence analyst who'd sold classified information for a promotion, and a younger woman. That's when I saw him. Ryan, my ex-husband, leaning against the bar with his new girlfriend. She was everything I wasn't. Tall, confident, wrapped in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His hand rested possessively on her lower back, the same way it used to rest on mine before I discovered he was a traitor. Part 2. Continuaco. The interior of the car enveloped me in luxurious darkness, buttersoft leather seats, ambient lighting, and a privacy partition already raised between us and the driver. As Daniel slid in beside me, I noticed the vehicle was larger than it appeared from outside, with ample space and what I suspected was armored plating. Comfortable? Daniel asked as the car pulled smoothly away from the curb. I nodded, suddenly hyper-aware of the intimacy of our surroundings. My worn dress felt shabby against the opulence surrounding me. Where are we going? I asked, watching the city lights blur past tinted windows. A place I own on the waterfront, he replied. Private, secure. Warning bells should have been clanging. Yet the danger radiating from Daniel didn't feel directed at me. If anything, it felt like a shield. You're very trusting, he observed. Am I? Most women wouldn't get into a car with a man they've just met, particularly one whose reputation clearly disturbs their ex-husband. I turned to face him fully. I'm not most women. No, he agreed, his eyes darkening. You're not. The car slowed, turning onto a private drive that wound through manicured grounds. When the house came into view, I couldn't contain a soft gasp. Glass and stone and sharp angles perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Lights glowed from within, illuminating multiple levels. The grounds were immaculate, with security features cleverly disguised among the landscaping. You live here? I asked. One of my residences, Daniel replied metaphorically. I prefer to be near the water when possible. The driver opened the door. Daniel exited first, then extended his hand to help me out. As my heels touched the pavement, I noticed we weren't alone. Discreet figures patrolled the perimeter, while a man in a tailored suit approached with respectful deference. Mr. Ashford, he greeted, then nodded to me. Ma'am, anything I should know about Marco? Daniel asked. Nothing urgent, sir. The situation from earlier has been addressed. Something passed between the men. Entire conversation, in a glance. Daniel nodded once. Ensure we're not disturbed, unless truly necessary. Of course, sir. As we approached the entrance, glass doors slid open silently. The interior matched the exterior's understated elegance, high ceilings, minimalist furnishings, art that I suspected cost more than my yearly salary. This is beautiful, I said, taking it all in. I appreciate beautiful things, he replied, his gaze fixed on me rather than his surroundings. He led me through the main living area toward what appeared to be a kitchen that belonged in a high-end restaurant. Stainless steel appliances gleamed, and a marble island dominated the center. Daniel moved with comfortable familiarity, opening a massive refrigerator to reveal containers labeled with elegant script. My chef prepared dinner before retiring, he said. Grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, or beef tenderloin with truffle mashed potatoes. The casual offer of food that would cost half a day's wages at a restaurant reminded me sharply of the disparity between us. Either is fine, I said, suddenly uncomfortable. Really, just a small plate. Daniel paused, studying me. You don't need to minimize your needs with me, Ella, not ever. The statement, delivered with such conviction, cracked something inside me. The salmon sounds wonderful, I managed. He nodded, preparing the plate with unexpectedly deft movements. Wine. Just water, please. I have an early shift tomorrow. As he moved around the kitchen, I noticed how the dangerous edge I'd sensed hadn't disappeared, had merely been channeled into controlled efficiency. Let's eat in the sitting room, he suggested. It's more comfortable. He led me to a space with a fireplace that sprang to life at the touch of a button. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the view, city skyline reflected in dark water, lights shimmering like fallen stars. The view is incredible, I said, drawn to the windows. It's why I chose this place, he replied, setting the tray on a low table before a plush sofa. Water is honest in ways people rarely are. I turned to find him watching me rather than the view. Is honesty important to you? I asked. Critically, he said without hesitation. In my position, lies are costly. As I ate the salmon was perfectly cooked, silence settled between us, weighted with unspoken questions. Finally, I set down my fork. Why am I here, Daniel? He smiled slightly. Perhaps I enjoy your company. There must be dozens of women who would enjoy your company without the complication of angry exes and ruined careers. Hundreds, he agreed without false modesty. But they want what I represent, not who I am. And you think I'm different. I know you're a nurse who works in emergency medicine, he countered. I know you were married for 6 years to a man who betrayed you, then compromised your entire career. I know you live alone in an apartment you can barely afford while working double shifts to make ends meet. I stared at him, shock washing through me. How could you possibly know all that? Daniel's expression remained impassive. Your ex mentioned 6 years when he confronted us. Your hands competent, steady, with short nails suggest healthcare. The way you assessed the room when we entered, cataloging exits and threats, speaks to emergency training. It was both impressive and unnerving to be read so thoroughly. So you've deduced I'm a hard luck case, I said bitterly. Is that why I'm here? You feel sorry for me? No. The word was sharp. Pity is the last thing I feel for you, Ella. Then what? Daniel set his glass down with deliberate care. I recognize something in you. Strength without hardness. Vulnerability without weakness. His eyes met mine. Intense. Do you know how rare it is to find someone who has been broken but not destroyed? His words struck with uncanny accuracy. You can't know that about me from one evening, I whispered. Can't I? He moved closer. Tell me I'm wrong. I couldn't. What do you want from me? I asked. Daniel's hand rose to my face, fingers tracing my cheek with exquisite gentleness. Everything, he said simply. But I'll settle for the chance to know you. Truly know you. The honesty in his voice shattered whatever resistance remained. I leaned into his touch. You don't even know my last name, I murmured. Martinez, he replied without hesitation. Ella Martinez, 32 years old. Graduated from St. Catherine's nursing program 5 years ago. Currently employed at Mercy General's emergency department, working on a nurse practitioner degree, part-time, until your ex-husband's actions forced you to put your education on hold. My eyes flew open. How do you? I told you, Daniel said, his thumb brushing my lower lip. I protect what interests me. That requires information. You had me investigated while we were at the club. He didn't deny it. I should have been outraged. Instead, I found myself leaning closer. Most women would run screaming, I said. I told you before, he replied, his hand sliding to the nape of my neck. You're not most women. The tension crystallized. Daniel's gaze dropped to my lips. The question clear. I answered by closing the distance, pressing my mouth to his in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something hungrier. His arms encircled me, pulling me against him as he deepened the kiss. I melted into him, months of loneliness crumbling beneath the onslaught of sensation. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, his eyes had darkened to obsidian. Stay, he whispered. Stay the night. Reality intruded. I can't. My shift starts at 6. Disappointment flickered across his features. Another time then. Another time, I agreed, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. He smiled, a predator who knew his prey would return willingly. I'll hold you to that promise. He helped me gather my things, his touches lingering as if he couldn't stop making contact. As we waited for his car, he disappeared briefly, returning with a sleek business card bearing only a phone number. My private line, he said, pressing it into my palm. Day or night, for any reason. I tucked it into my purse, its weight seemingly greater than it should be. Thank you, I said, for everything. Your ex-husband's fate is in his own hands, he said cryptically. His choices will determine what happens next. Before I could press for clarification, the car appeared. Daniel walked me to it, his hand at the small of my back. Message me when you get home safely, he said. Is that an order, Mr. Ashford? His eyes darkened at my use of his surname. Consider it a strong suggestion from someone who worries. You hardly know me well enough to worry. I know enough, he replied simply, and I intend to know more, much more. As the car pulled away, I watched Daniel's figure recede in the mirror standing tall before his waterfront home. a man of power and danger who had somehow inserted himself into my life. 3 weeks later, the relationship that developed between Daniel and me defied conventional timelines. We saw each other as often as my hospital schedule allowed, dinners at his home, quiet walks along the waterfront, conversations that stretched into the early morning hours. He showed me glimpses of his world gradually. First, his legitimate businesses, security consulting firms that contracted with governments worldwide. Then the layers beneath: intelligence networks, information brokerage, the shadowy work of a man who operated in spaces between nations and laws. "I'm not CIA," he explained one evening on his terrace. "Not officially, but I work with them, and MI6, and Mossad, and a dozen other agencies that need deniability for certain operations." "A freelance spy," I said, trying to wrap my mind around it. "An independent contractor in the intelligence sector," he corrected with a slight smile. "I broker information, facilitate operations that official channels can't touch, provide resources for missions that don't officially exist. And Ryan knew about you." Daniel's expression hardened. "Your ex-husband sold classified information to a foreign operative I'd been tracking for 2 years. When I discovered the leak came from an analyst at the NSA, I had him investigated. That's when I learned about you." Pieces clicked into place with alarming clarity. "You knew about me before we met at the club." "Yes. That wasn't a coincidence." "You being there that night?" "No," he admitted. "I'd been monitoring Ryan's movements, trying to determine who he was selling to. When I learned he'd be at that club with his new girlfriend, I arranged to be there as well." I should have been angry about the manipulation. Instead, I felt oddly relieved that there was a rational explanation. "And when I asked you to dance, that was genuine surprise," Daniel said, something warm entering his eyes. "Beautiful providence. I'd noticed you earlier, couldn't help but notice you honestly, but I had no intention of approaching you. Then you came to me, and I couldn't resist." "What were you going to do about Ryan?" "Nothing yet. I was still gathering evidence, building a case. But then I saw how he'd hurt you, not just the divorce, but destroying your career out of spite when the investigation began, making you a scapegoat to deflect from his own crimes." His jaw tightened. "That changed things." "What did you do?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I ensured certain evidence reached the right people. Ryan is currently under federal indictment for espionage. He's facing 25 years minimum. The news should have shocked me. Instead, I felt only a grim satisfaction. And my clearance, the investigation that cost you your security clearance, has been reopened, with new evidence showing you had no knowledge of Ryan's activities. Your clearance is being reinstated. The hospital has already been informed." Tears pricked my eyes. "You did that for me." "Justice should have been served correctly the first time," Daniel said simply. "I merely corrected an injustice." I moved into his arms, overwhelmed by gratitude and something deeper, something I'd been afraid to name. "I love you," I whispered against his chest. I felt him go still, then his arms tightened around me. "Say that again," he demanded softly. I pulled back to look up at him. "I love you, Daniel Ashford. However this started, whatever brought us together, I love you." His kiss was gentle, reverent. "I love you, Ella Martinez. From the moment you asked me to dance, you've owned my heart." 2 months later, the threat came suddenly, as these things often did in Daniel's world. I was leaving the hospital after a shift when a black SUV pulled alongside me. The window rolled down, revealing a face I didn't recognize, cold eyes in a nondescript face. "Miss Martinez, get in the car, please." My training kicked in immediately. Assessed the threat, identify exits, prepare to run. "I don't think so," I said, already backing toward the hospital entrance where security waited. "It's not a request," the man said. "My employer would like to speak with you about Daniel Ashford. You have information he needs. I have nothing to say to your cooperation can be voluntary or involuntary. Your choice." Before I could respond, Daniel's voice cut through the tension. "She's not going anywhere with you." I turned to find Daniel emerging from another vehicle, flanked by Marco and 2 other men I recognized from his security team. The man in the SUV's expression didn't change, but I saw him tense. "Ashford, this doesn't concern you." "Everything concerning Ella concerns me," Daniel replied, his voice deadly calm. "Who sent you?" "That's not information I'm at liberty to share." Daniel moved closer to me, his body a shield. "Tell Volkov if he wants to speak with me, he can do so directly." Using civilians as leverage won't end well for him. Volkov. I didn't recognize the name, but clearly it meant something to Daniel. The man in the SUV studied Daniel for a long moment, then nodded once. I'll relay the message. As the vehicle pulled away, I realized I was shaking. Daniel's arms came around me immediately. You're safe. I've got you. Who's Volkov? I asked. Daniel's expression was grim. A complication from an operation 6 months ago. I exposed a mole in his organization. He's been looking for leverage to negotiate his operative's release. And he thinks I'm that leverage. He knows you are, Daniel said quietly. Because he knows how much you mean to me. The implications were clear. By loving me, Daniel had given his enemies a target. Maybe I should, I began. But Daniel cut me off. Don't even finish that thought. You're not leaving. We're not separating. We face this together. But if I'm putting you at risk, Ella. He cupped my face in his hands. You don't put me at risk. You give me something worth protecting. Something worth fighting for. There's a difference. Despite the fear coursing through me, I found myself smiling. You're very stubborn, you know that. I prefer determined, he replied. Now, you're coming home with me. Tonight and every night until this situation is resolved. No arguments. For once, I didn't argue. The next week was spent in Daniel's waterfront home, surrounded by security that had tripled overnight. I continued working. Daniel insisted I maintain my routine as much as possible, but always with protection. Marco became my constant shadow, professional and discreet, but always present. Daniel worked the problem from multiple angles, calling in favors, applying pressure through channels I could only guess at. I learned more about his world in those days than in all our previous time together. The complex web of alliances and obligations, the careful balance of power, the constant calculations of risk and reward. Finally, the call came. I was reading in the library when Daniel entered, his expression unreadable. It's handled, he said simply. What does that mean? It means Volkov has agreed to terms. His operative will be released in exchange for certain concessions on my part. He's agreed to leave you and anyone else I care about of future conflicts. Relief flooded through me. Is it over then? This particular threat? Yes. Daniel sat beside me, taking my hand. But Ella, you need to understand this is my life. There will always be risks, always be people who might try to use those I love to get to me. I can minimize those risks, but I can't eliminate them entirely. Are you trying to give me an out? I asked. A chance to walk away before I'm in too deep. I'm trying to be honest about what a life with me means, what you'd be signing up for. I set down my book, turning to face him fully. Daniel, I work in an emergency department. I deal with life and death situations every day. I understand risk. I understand danger. This is different, is it? I challenged. You face threats from foreign operatives and rival intelligence brokers. I face threats from armed drug addicts and violent psychiatric patients. We both live with danger. The question is whether we face it together or apart. Something shifted in his expression, relief mixed with wonder. You're extraordinary, he murmured. I'm practical, I corrected, and in love with you. Those two facts aren't in conflict. Daniel pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly. Marry me, he said suddenly. I pulled back to look at him. What? Marry me, Ella. I know it's fast. I know there are 1,000 reasons to wait. But I also know that life is uncertain, and I don't want to waste a single moment not being fully committed to you. Tears pricked my eyes. That's not the most romantic proposal. No, he agreed. This is. He slid from the couch to kneel before me, pulling a small box from his pocket. Ella Martinez, from the moment you asked me to dance, my life changed. You brought light to my shadows, softness to my edges, purpose to my existence. I love you with everything I am, and I want to spend whatever time we're given making you as happy as you've made me. Will you marry me? The ring he offered gleamed in the soft library light in emeralds surrounded by diamonds, echoing the earrings from our first night together. Yes, I said, my voice breaking with emotion. Yes, to everything. As he slid the ring onto my finger, then rose to kiss me. I marveled at the strange path that had led us here. A dance requested out of desperation. A stranger who turned out to be so much more. A love that had developed against all odds and logic. When? I asked when we finally parted. As soon as possible, Daniel replied. Unless you want a big wedding. I thought of my small circle of friends, my strained family relationships, the complications of trying to plan something elaborate. Small, I said. Just the people who matter most. Maybe it's sunset, here on the terrace, overlooking the water. Perfect, he agreed. Absolutely perfect. 6 months later, the sunset wedding on Daniel's terrace was everything I'd hoped for: intimate, beautiful, and deeply personal. My sister Clara served as my maid of honor, while Marco stood up for Daniel. A handful of close friends and Daniel's sister completed the small gathering. As we exchanged vows with the ocean as our witness, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From that desperate moment in a club, asking a dangerous stranger to dance, to this moment of commitment and hope. I promise to see you, I said when it was my turn to speak. Really see you. Not just what you show the world. I promise to stand beside you, not behind you. To be your partner in all things, joy and danger, triumph and challenge. Daniel's eyes shone with emotion as he replied, I promise to protect you without smothering you. To support your dreams without trying to control them. To love you, not for what you can give me, but for who you are. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite our audience. You asked me to dance because your ex was watching. I danced with you and found the missing piece of myself. Every day with you is a gift I never expected to receive. As we sealed our vows with a kiss, applause and cheers erupting around us, I reflected on the strange truth of our story. Sometimes danger wears a beautiful face. Sometimes the most unlikely person becomes the safest place to fall. Sometimes asking a stranger to dance changes everything. Daniel pulled back, his eyes searching mine. No regrets. None, I said firmly. You. Only that I didn't find you sooner, he replied. As we turned to face our small gathering of loved ones, husband and wife, I caught a glimpse of movement at the edge of the property. Daniel's security team, ever vigilant even during his wedding. It was a reminder that our life together wouldn't be simple or safe. There would be threats, complications, moments of danger that came with loving a man who operated in the shadows. But there would also be this moments of profound connection, of being truly seen and valued, of partnership that faced challenges together rather than apart. Ready, Daniel murmured as we prepared to walk back down the aisle as a married couple. I squeezed his hand. With you, always. The reception that followed was small but joyous. Clara cornered me during dinner, wine-flushed and emotional. I was so worried about you, she admitted. After Ryan, after everything fell apart. You were so lost. I agreed, but you're not anymore. Daniel, he's good for you. I see it in your face, how you carry yourself now. You're confident again, happy. I am, I said, watching my new husband across the terrace. He was speaking with Marco, but his attention kept drifting to me, our eyes meeting in shared glances that spoke of intimacy and promise. Later, after our guests had departed and the catering staff had cleaned up, Daniel and I stood alone on the terrace where we'd spoken our vows. Mrs. Ashford, he said, testing out the name. I smiled. I'm keeping Martinez professionally. Less confusing for the hospital, of course. Though I have to admit, I like the idea of you carrying my name. Possessive, I teased. Absolutely, he agreed without shame. You're mine now, Ella, legally, officially, and in every way that matters. And you're mine, I replied, stepping into his arms. My dangerous, mysterious, impossible to resist spy. Not impossible to resist, he murmured against my hair. You resisted for at least 5 minutes that first night. I laughed. I did, didn't I? Very strong willpower, the strongest, he agreed, which makes it all the more meaningful that you chose me. I'll always choose you, I said. The vow, as binding as those we'd spoken during the ceremony. In every situation, in every crisis, in every moment I choose you. His arms tightened around me. The feeling is entirely mutual. As we swayed together to music only we could hear, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the distance, I thought about Ryan, where he was now, locked away in a federal prison, his crimes finally answered for. I thought about the version of myself who had walked into that club 6 months ago, hollow and lost, looking for a moment of vindication. And I thought about the woman I'd become, stronger, more sure of herself, loved in ways she'd never imagined possible. Thank you, I whispered. Daniel pulled back to look at me. For what? For dancing with me that night, for seeing me when I felt invisible, for loving me even knowing all my complications and baggage. Ella, he cupped my face gently. You have that backwards. Thank you for asking me to dance, for seeing past what I am to who I am, for loving me despite the danger and complications I bring to your life. We're quite a pair, I observed. The best pair, he corrected. As the moon rose over the water, we remained on our terrace, wrapped in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The ex who had been watching from the bar that first night was facing justice. The woman who had been invisible was now seen, valued, loved, and the dangerous stranger who had offered a dance had become home. It was, I reflected, the best decision I'd ever made. Dance with me, Daniel said softly, echoing my first words to him. Always, I replied. And we danced beneath the stars, husband and wife, spy and nurse, two unlikely souls who had found each other in the shadows of a nightclub and built a life in the light. Epilogue, 1 year later, could you dance with me? My ex is watching from the bar. I smiled as I watched the young woman approach a stranger in the corner of the club, the same club where Daniel and I had met 2 years ago. We'd returned tonight for our anniversary, slipping in discreetly to remember our beginning. Should we help her? I murmured to Daniel. He followed my gaze, assessing the situation with professional precision. The man she's approaching is FBI, undercover, working a trafficking case. Her ex is small-time muscle for the operation they're targeting. How do you possibly know that? Daniel smiled. I consulted on this operation 3 months ago. That agent, his name is Marcus's, one of the best. She'll be safe with him. We watched as the agent accepted the woman's request, leading her to the dance floor with the same protective positioning Daniel had used with me. Think they'll end up like us? I asked. That depends on whether she asks the right questions and whether he gives honest answers, Daniel replied. But they have a chance. Just like we did. I leaned into my husband's embrace, secure in the life we'd built. My career had flourished since my clearance was reinstated. I'd completed my nurse practitioner degree and now worked at the hospital, training new emergency staff. Daniel had gradually transitioned more of his operations toward legitimate intelligence consulting. Still dangerous, but less likely to bring violence to our doorstep. We'd bought a home together, not his waterfront estate or my tiny apartment, but something new we'd chosen jointly. A fresh start, just as he'd promised. Ready to go home? Daniel asked. I looked up at him, this dangerous, complicated man, who had somehow become the safest place in my world. With you. Always. As we left the club, I glanced back once at the woman still dancing with the FBI agent, both of them unaware of how this single dance might change everything. I hoped she'd be as fortunate as I'd been, that her desperate request for a dance would lead somewhere as unexpected and wonderful as mine had. But whether it did or not, I knew one truth with absolute certainty. Sometimes the most dangerous decisions lead to the greatest rewards. Sometimes the strangers we ask to dance become the loves of our lives. And sometimes, just sometimes, asking, could you dance with me, is the bravest and best thing we ever do. My throat constricted. The arguments, the betrayal, the final night when federal agents had shown up at our door. They'd questioned me for hours, suspicious that I'd known about his activities. I hadn't. I'd been too busy working double shifts as a nurse to notice my husband was selling secrets. You look like you're about to either cry or commit murder. A voice cut through the haze of my thoughts, deep, slightly accented, with an edge that sliced through the music. I turned, blinking back tears I refused to acknowledge. The man beside me wasn't what I expected in this mediocre downtown club. His presence seemed to part the crowd without effort, not because of his height, though he towered over me, but something more fundamental. Authority radiated from him like heat. He wore a suit that whispered of wealth rather than screamed it. Charcoal gray against a black shirt, no tie. The faint scent of expensive cologne mingled with something earthier, leather perhaps, and the ghost of gunpowder. Neither, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt, just realizing I should have picked a different bar. His eyes, dark as polished obsidian, followed my gaze to Ryan. Something cold flickered across his features, there and gone in an instant. Your ex? He asked, though it didn't sound like a question. I nodded, suddenly aware of how pathetic I must seem. Hiding in the corner, nursing a watered-down drink, staring daggers at my ex-husband. Could you dance with me? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. My ex is watching from the bar, and I stopped, heat rushing to my cheeks. Sorry, that was inappropriate. I don't even know you. The stranger's mouth curved into something not quite a smile. You don't. His gaze swept over me, not leering, but cataloging every detail. But I know his type. He extended his hand. Long fingers, manicured nails, a heavy silver watch peeking from beneath his cuff. Something about his palm calloused in places a businessman shouldn't be sent a warning shivered down my spine. One dance, he said softly. Make him regret ever letting you go. I hesitated, instinct warring with desperation. Then Ryan laughed loud enough to carry over the music, his new girlfriend giggling against his shoulder. I placed my hand in the stranger's. His grip was firm as he led me to the dance floor, his other hand settling at the small of my back. The touch was light but somehow commanding, guiding me through the crowd with practiced ease. As we moved, I noticed two men in dark suits shift positions near the bar, their eyes never leaving us. Not security for the club, something else. I'm Ella, I said, suddenly needing to fill the silence between us. Daniel, he replied, though something in his tones suggested it wasn't the name he typically used. The song shifted to something slower, more intimate. Daniel pulled me closer, one hand sliding to my waist. I caught Ryan watching, his expression darkening. He's watching, Daniel murmured near my ear. Does that make you happy? I shook my head. Not happy, just ... Vindicated, maybe. For months I felt invisible, discarded. Men who discard beautiful things are fools, Daniel said, his voice hardening. Or worse, the compliment caught me off guard. In the months since the divorce, since the FBI investigation, since losing my security clearance for my hospital's federal contracts, I'd become a ghost. You don't have to say that, I whispered. This is just pretend. Daniel spun me gently, bringing me back to face him with unexpected grace. I never say things I don't mean. Ella. The way he said my name like he was tasting it sent a flush of heat through me. For a moment, I forgot about Ryan, about the divorce, about the mountain of legal bills. There was only the music, the dim lights, and this dangerous feeling stranger holding me like I was something precious. Then reality crashed back as Ryan moved through the crowd toward us. He's coming over, I whispered. Daniel's expression didn't change, but I felt him shift almost imperceptibly, angling his body between me and the approaching threat. Let him, he said quietly. Perhaps it's time he learned the value of what he discarded. Before I could respond, Ryan was there, alcohol flushing his face. Ella, he slurred, reaching for my arm. What the hell? I've been trying to call you for weeks. I stepped back, bumping into Daniel's chest. His hand came to rest protectively on my shoulder. I changed my number, I said, hating the tremor in my voice. For obvious reasons. Ryan's gaze flicked to Daniel, dismissive at first, then wary as he registered something I couldn't see. Who's this? Ryan demanded. Didn't take you long to move on. The accusations stung. That's none of your business anymore. I think you should leave. Daniel's voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The lady doesn't want to speak with you. Ryan laughed, but it sounded forced. Who talks like that? Stay out of this, man. This is between me and my wife, ex-wife, I corrected. Whatever. Ryan reached for me again. Daniel moved so quickly I barely registered it. One moment Ryan was reaching for my arm, the next he was stepping back, Daniel's hand firmly against his chest. That's not going to happen, Daniel said, his voice dropping to something that wasn't quite a whisper, but somehow more threatening. Now, I suggest you return to your date before you embarrass yourself further. Ryan's face flushed darker. You don't know who you're messing with. Something shifted in Daniel's posture, subtle change that transformed him from merely intimidating to genuinely dangerous. No, he replied. You don't know who you're messing with. I noticed the two men I'd spotted earlier moving through the crowd, their attention fixed on our confrontation. Ryan must have noticed them too, because he backed up a step, his bravado faltering. This isn't over, Ella, he said, but the threat sounded hollow. We need to talk about the clearance issue. There's nothing to talk about, I said, finding strength in Daniel's solid presence. You're the traitor, not me. The FBI cleared me. Enough. Daniel didn't raise his voice, but Ryan stopped mid-sentence. The lady has made her position clear. For a tense moment, I thought Ryan might actually throw a punch, but then one of Daniel's men appeared at his side, whispering something in his ear that made Ryan's eyes widen. He backed away quickly, pushing through the crowd without another word. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, my knees suddenly weak. Daniel's hand moved to the small of my back, steadying me. Are you all right? He asked, genuine concern lacing his voice. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The encounter had left me shaking, not just with fear, but with anger. Thank you, I finally managed. I should probably go. This was a mistake. The night is still young, Daniel said, and you've barely touched your drink. He gestured to a secluded booth where my abandoned cocktail now sat alongside a fresh one. I hadn't seen anyone move it. How did I take care of what's mine? Daniel said simply, then paused. Not that you are mine, but for tonight, while we're pretending. He let the sentence hang, an invitation and a warning wrapped in velvet. I should have said no, should have thanked him for his help and gone home. But something in his eyes, a loneliness that echoed my own, perhaps made me nod instead. One more drink, I agreed. To thank you properly. As we settled into the booth, I caught sight of Ryan at the bar, arguing with his girlfriend. The two men in suits flanked the exit, their posture casual but their attention never wavering from Daniel. Who are you really? I asked, curiosity overcoming caution. Daniel's fingers drummed once on the tabula gesture of consideration, not nervousness. Someone who recognizes value when he sees it, he said finally. Someone who doesn't discard beautiful things. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters tonight, he replied. His phone vibrated on the table. He glanced at it, his expression hardening momentarily before he silenced it. Important. Nothing that can't wait. He slipped the phone into his pocket. Tell me about yourself, Ella. What do you do when you're not making fools jealous in nightclubs? I'm a nurse, I said. Emergency department. Not very glamorous. A healer. Daniel leaned forward slightly. That suits you. Because I look nurturing. Because your first instinct when I stepped between you and danger was to ask if I was okay, he said. Most people ask what I'm going to do for them. You asked what you could do for me. I hadn't realized he'd noticed that small moment of concern. Occupational hazard, I said. I see someone tense up. I assume they're in pain. And what about your pain, Ela? He asked softly. Who takes care of that? The question hit harder than expected, cracking something in my chest that I'd carefully kept sealed. I manage, I said, my voice thick. Daniel reached across the table, his fingers brushing Mina touch so light it might have been accidental, if not for the intent in his eyes. Perhaps it's time someone managed for you. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed again. This time he checked it and frowned. I apologize, he said, but I need to take this. He slipped from the booth with fluid grace. Don't move, I'll be right back. As he stepped away, one of his men materialized from the crowd, taking up position near our table, close enough to watch over me, far enough to give the illusion of privacy. I watched Daniel move toward the exit, phone pressed to his ear. Even from behind, he commanded attention. When he reached the door, colored lights washing over him, I noticed the bulge beneath his jacket. A gun. The realization should have sent me running, but something held me in place. Curiosity, perhaps, or the intoxicating feeling of safety his presence provided. Who was this man who carried a weapon so casually? Who had men watching his every move? Who made my dangerous ex-husband back down with nothing more than a whispered word? Daniel returned minutes later, the hardness I'd glimpsed outside vanishing behind his charming mask. Business never sleeps. Unfortunately, he said, resuming his seat. What kind of business keeps men with guns on payroll? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Daniel went still, his dark eyes studying me with new intensity. The successful kind, he said finally. Does that frighten you, Ella? It should have. But what I felt wasn't fear, it was awareness, heightened and electric. I'm not sure yet, I answered honestly. Something like approval flickered across his features. Honesty without calculation, rare. From the corner of my eye, I caught Ryan watching us, his new girlfriend attempting to reclaim his attention. Your ex seems troubled, Daniel observed. Perhaps we should give him something more to worry about. Before I could respond, he was beside me rather than across from me, his arms sliding around my shoulders with casual possession. Is this okay? He asked, his lips close to my ear. The question surprised me. Men who radiated power like Daniel rarely asked permission. I nodded, not trusting my voice. His fingers traced idle patterns on my bare shoulder, each touch sending sparks through me. Tell me about the clearance issue he mentioned, he said, his tone conversational despite the intensity of his gaze. The reminder cut through the pleasant haze. It's nothing, I said automatically. Don't do that, he said softly. Don't diminish your worth. Not with me. Something in his gaze, a rawness beneath the control, broke through my defenses. When we divorced, Ryan was under federal investigation for selling classified intelligence, I explained. As his wife, I lost my security clearance too. The hospital where I work lost several federal contracts because of it. I was encouraged to find other employment. Daniel's expression didn't change, but I felt a shift in him, like a predator going still before the strike. And the authorities cleared me eventually, I said, but the damage was done. No hospital with federal contracts will hire me now. I'm working at a small private clinic for half what I used to make. So he stole not just your marriage, but your career, Daniel said, his voice deceptively mild. Your reputation, your future. It's not your problem, I said quickly. You barely know me. Perhaps I'd like to change that. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, a touch so light it might have been imagined if not for the fire it left in its wake. Perhaps I find myself ... Invested, the word carried weight beyond its syllables. Why? I whispered. Because rare things should be treasured, he said. Because a man who would discard someone like you, who would compromise your life for his own gain, doesn't deserve to breathe the same air. The intensity of his declaration should have frightened me. Instead, it awakened something I'd thought dead, a flicker of worth, of being valued. Come to dinner with me tomorrow, he said. Not quite a question, not quite a command. I can't, I said, regret coloring my voice. I have a double shift. The following night then. I hesitated. I don't make a habit of going to dinner with armed strangers. A smile curved his lips. Then perhaps we should become better acquainted. He leaned closer. Ask me anything, Ella. Tonight I'm an open book. It was a dangerous invitation from a man who was clearly anything but open. Those men, I said, nodding toward the ones still watching us. They work for you. They work with me, he corrected, under my protection. And what do you protect them from? The world is full of predators. Ella, men who take what isn't theirs. His gaze flickered meaningfully toward Ryan. I provide balance. You're not in legal business, are you? Daniel laughed, a sound genuine. Not exclusively, no. His fingers resumed their patterns on my shoulder. Does that bother you? I considered the question honestly. I think justice and legality aren't always the same thing. Surprise flickered across his features. A nuanced perspective. What did you expect? Judgment, fear, a hasty departure. Before I could respond, movement near the bar caught my attention. Ryan was arguing with his girlfriend. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the exit, leaving him alone. His gaze immediately sought me out, his expression darkening when he found me nestled against Daniel's side. Your ex appears to be having relationship troubles, Daniel observed with satisfaction. Ryan pushed away from the bar, weaving slightly as he made his way toward us. My body tensed before my mind could process the threat. Daniel felt the change immediately. Do you want me to handle this? No, I said, straightening my spine. I've spent too long letting other people fight my battles. I slid from the booth, Daniel following with effortless grace. Ryan reached us, alcohol flushing his face. We need to talk, he slurred. I stepped back, avoiding his touch. We have nothing to discuss. The clearance, he insisted. It's not what you think. There were complications. The only complication is that you sold classified information, I said, finding strength in Daniel's solid presence. You betrayed your country. You destroyed my career. And now you're going to leave me alone. Ryan's face contorted with anger. Or what? You'll sick your new boyfriend on me. He turned to Daniel, his judgment impaired enough to miss the warning signs. Who the hell are you anyway? Someone you don't want to antagonize, Daniel replied coldly. Someone who's quickly losing patience with your disrespect. Ryan laughed, the sound ugly. Disrespect? She's my wife, ex-wife. I corrected again, anger replacing fear. And I'm not your property. I never was. The lady has made herself clear, Daniel said. This is your final warning. Ryan's face flushed darker. Or what? He never finished the sentence. One of Daniel's men appeared at Ryan's side, whispering something that drained the color from his face. Ryan's eyes widened as he looked at Daniel with new understanding, mistakable fear. Ashford, he whispered. You're Daniel Ashford. The name clearly meant something to Ryan that it hadn't to me. Daniel merely inclined his head slightly, neither confirming nor denying. Ryan backed away, hands raised. This is just a misunderstanding. No disrespect intended. I didn't know she was with you. She wasn't, Daniel replied softly. But she is now. The possessive declaration should have angered me. Instead, it sent a thrill through me. Ryan continued his retreat, nearly stumbling in his haste to escape. As he disappeared into the crowd, I turned to Daniel. Who are you? I asked. Why is he so afraid of you? Daniel considered me for a long moment. I'm someone who ensures debts are paid, he finally said. And your ex-husband has just realized he's significantly overdrawn. The implications sank in slowly. You're not just in gray areas of business, I said carefully. Your intelligence, a man of influence, he supplied. In circles most people prefer not to acknowledge, a spy, or something close enough that the distinction didn't matter. I should have been terrified, should have walked away and never looked back. Yet all I felt was a strange calm. Are you going to hurt him? I asked. Would it bother you if I did? I considered the question honestly, thinking of the nights I'd cried after discovering Ryan's betrayal, the humiliation of losing my career, the casual cruelty of his dismissals. It should, I said finally, but I don't know if it would. Something like approval flickered in Daniel's eyes. Come, he said, offering his hand. This place has lost its appeal. I hesitated, standing at a crossroads. Behind me lay safety, predictability. Before me stood something else entirely risk. Yes, but also possibility. Where would we go? Somewhere quieter, where we can talk without interruption. My driver is outside. He'll take you home whenever you wish, whether that's 5 minutes or 5 hours from now. It was the assurance of freedom that finally decided me. I placed my hand in his,